Welcome into Flag for Discussion, episode 73 for Monday, March 30th. My name is Farvan Merkazi, here as always with my main man, Jace Hatfield. We got a lot to talk about today. We got a full slate of topics, full slate of college football, and they said it couldn't be done in March to talk about college football as much as we do. But we still do it. We do it every day. We just don't record it. Other than that, though, we're going to talk about Lane Kiffin. He's like pumping the brakes on expectations for LSU this season. We'll talk about the SEC win totals. Notre Dame, I think someone's got to step in and intervene with how light and weak their schedule is. Do they have any excuse not to be in the playoff this year? We'll discuss all of that. Baseball's back, Jace. I know we're not. This isn't a baseball show, but it's like I think it was both you and I's first love.
Yeah, first love and sport that we both played. Plus, we're not helping our case here because we both got varying baseball hats on. You got the Nana Ball hat that you came back from yesterday. I want to hear a little bit about that, and then I just got the good old Wrigley Field mustard on a dog hat going on. Which I mean, dude, it's a great hat. I had to buy it when I saw it.
Okay, call me ignorant. Maybe it's because I'm not from the Midwest. Is Wrigley Field known for their hot dogs?
They're like no better than, a normal ballpark. They're big into their Vienna beef dogs here, and that's what they serve. But the big thing is Chicago dogs, and then they don't do ketchup on their hot dogs. So that's why this has just the mustard.
Got it.
There's a look at my crazy
It's
hair.
a sick hat. No, it's a sick hat. That was the first thing. Tell the viewers I'm not lying. When you hopped on this show, the first thing I said was, "What a cool hat." I didn't even say hello. I commented on the hat.
Well, thank you. Yeah,
no,
it's a good one. It's funny because we were rocking two foods, and then you've got a banana lining up a home run here on your hat for your first one here.
Yeah, we went to Savannah Bananas game or show. Well, I don't know what you call it, yesterday at Angel Stadium. And my entire takeaway afterwards was everyone who keeps talking about that, like, who complains about the bananas. Like, there's a faction of baseball fans who are just the purists and traditionalists who will hate on the bananas because they're like, that's not real baseball. That's not the sport I love. We don't need that to make baseball fun. It's like, it's not the same thing. They're not trying to play baseball. Like they're just trying to put on a show with baseball involved. Like baseball was the last thing that was happening yesterday.
Yeah, do they keep a score? That's something I've been curious
about. They do.
Like, is there?
So both teams score, and each inning, whoever has the most runs in that inning gets a point.
Okay.
I don't know if the Bananas have ever lost. I'm not really up to date on my Bananas history, but the Bananas, I think, won the game yesterday. If that matters. The craziest part for baseball fans, Jackie Bradley Jr. was playing, and he hit a home run. I was looking at it, I was like, Jack, that guy just won a World Series. What's he doing here?
He was supposed to be like roaming the Red Sox outfield for the next 12 years and just kind of fell through on him. But hey, I'm glad. Was he for the Bananas or was he for whoever?
He was for the Indianapolis Clowns. He was on the Indianapolis Clowns.
I like that.
Yeah.
This is kind of like the Harlem Globetrotters of baseball. I've been to a Globetrotters game when they came to Grand Rapids when I was a kid. It was kind of fun. It feels like that. I know the Globetrotters games were like fully, like, the outcomes were determined, so they would always win. But I have no idea if Banana Ball does that or not.
Well, that's the thing is I'm sure I was talking about this yesterday with someone because we were wondering how much of this is scripted. And obviously, like, the specific things that happen in between pitches, if there's a song or dance breakout, that stuff's scripted. But I don't know if you can script a home run, right?
Yeah,
like,
that's tough.
I don't know how much of those base hits you can script. There were some great plays that were made, the trick plays, behind the back stuff, umpires for doing backflips. All of that was just really impressive. I enjoyed all of that.
Did they have ABS going?
No, there was a fan challenge though. They
I like that.
assigned one fan to each team to be the representative of their fan base, and if they didn't like a call, it would like stop the game, and the fans would challenge the game.
Did any of the fans challenge it? Did they get them right? That's kind of fun.
No, I think the Clowns fan challenged it, and they got it wrong. But no, it was really cool. We saw For any non-Angel fan, this probably doesn't mean anything, but Jared Weaver came out and threw 2 batters in the Bananas uniform, and when I tell you the whole stadium got up on their feet and like wouldn't get down until Jared got off the mound, that was like my childhood favorite pitcher. Like that was our guy. So when they said Jared Weaver, we all were like, "Oh my god!"
Do you want to know my biggest memory of Jared Weaver as a Tigers fan? It was him and Carlos Guillen. And Carlos Guillen was just there jawing at each other. Great. That's a great clip. If you've never searched that, search the Jared Weaver, Carlos Guillen, like jawing at each other. That's a great, because both those guys are pretty fiery. Neither of them were going to back down. So yeah, they'll throw at him, and yeah, I can't say what was said here, but go to look.
Jared Weaver was a dog. He lost his velocity quick. But he has, I think, 2 main clips like that. It's the Carlos Guillen, and then he has, actually might have like 4, but 3 of them are with this one guy, and it's all Kyle Seager of the Mariners. Like it was, for some reason, it was the Mariners with Kyle Seager and Carlos Guillen of the Tigers in Detroit that one time.
You know what? Carlos Guillen was a Mariner before coming to Detroit, so I wonder if it started there and just carried over.
He just doesn't like Seattle.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, they're beefing.
No, okay. One story before we get off of baseball and make this a college football show, maybe. I think in like 2016, I volunteered at Angels RBI baseball camp, where like they brought in a bunch of kids. They like went around the stadium, did like infield drills, outfield drills, and then they came into the bullpen and threw bullpens, the Angels bullpen catchers. And these are like, I don't know, anywhere from 6 to 13-year-old kids. But the Angels had some like representatives from the team on the staff, and I was in the bullpen. I saw a couple of the Angels relievers, and that was at the time that like Weave was still on the team. And I asked them, I was like, what? Because I was still pitching. I was like, what do you guys do to work out? Make sure your arm is good in between starts, in between outings. They told me their stuff, and then I asked them, what do you think happened to Weave? And they said Weave was just one of those guys that came out of college with such a cannon that he just never worked out in between starts. So that's why at 33 or what it was, he was throwing 86, because he just wasn't keeping, like, he was throwing 200 innings a year. He was throwing 94, 95 early in his career. And then that stuff just started going down pretty quickly. But like, he was one of my favorite pitchers growing up, just because the deception he had with his motion, like everything, movement on his pitches, command, it was all there, and the fieriness. I know you guys got the bad end of it, but I don't think pitchers like that exist very, very much anymore in baseball. Where like there's just fire, like Tariq Skubal is one of them. I was
gonna say,
like the Max Scherzer variety.
Yeah, that fiery pitcher, like it feels so classic. Just Weaver was this way too, like the Skubal. Like I just want to work quick. Like the second the catcher catches it, I know Skubal has it where it's just catch and throw. Don't talk to I don't need to change the baseball out, catch, throw, and he just wants to work. Weaver was like that too. You get a strikeout, they'll let you know. It's fun to watch. It makes it. I feel like it elevates the stakes. And baseball is one of those sports that if a batter like feels like, if you're a pitcher and you strike a batter out and you kind of jaw at them, you've raised the stakes now for the whole game, because now the entire other team is now like playing at a higher level. Not that people were jawing each other in the World Baseball Classic, but we saw the heightened emotion, and I just love when games play that way, and fiery pitchers set that tone versus like not lame's not the right word, but the more like stoic pitchers, they don't raise the emotion the way that a Jared Weaver would, or in today's world, Tariq Skubal does.
Yeah. In other news, opening day for the Mets, 2 birds collided in right field. Well, they had to pause the game and carry the birds out. What's with birds in baseball?
There might be something about the big open fields. Maybe they're the fertilizer they use. There was also kind of in a similar note to that. Did you see in a golf tournament like a week or 2 ago, there was someone like hit a drive and it clipped a bird, and people were calling it the Randy Johnson drive. The bird was okay. It didn't. Luckily, the ball didn't hit it, but it did clip it, and that was kind of a funny. The bird's all right, so it was fun. I guess I should say. I mean, that's the nice take.
And then I guess the only other thing I should talk to you about is squirrels are vaping. I don't know if you saw that. Yeah, there was it was blown up on Twitter on like Wednesday or Thursday, where squirrels were looking for food. They went for the fruity smells of the vapes and they put it in their mouth. They weren't like actually vaping, but it caught like wildfire on social media.
Nicotine addicted squirrels.
Some housekeeping for everybody. This week, obviously, we're gonna have our normal show as possible. Next week, we may be wearing the same clothing we are right now, but that don't mind that. We are going to have a full first round NFL mock draft. Next week's show will be April, and the NFL draft is in April. So we're gonna kind of blend our love of the NFL and our love of college football together in one show next week. Keep an eye out for that as you're listening to this one as well. All right, I want to talk about Lane Kiffin.
We're hopping on the Lane train, baby. Let's go.
Are we? So Lane Kiffin had a press conference earlier this week where he basically said there's a lot of work left to do for LSU. They went 7-6 last year. He said we've assembled a good roster, but at the same time, there's a ton of work that goes into getting the program back to where everybody wants it to be and the reason we came here. It was 7-6 last year. Within that comes some change. Within that comes a lot of work because that's a long jump to go to the level that I came here to get at and all the people around the program wanted to be at. LSU's win total next year is 8.5. I have their schedule up and running in front of me too. My only question is, if Lane is right and they aren't much better than 7-6, let's say they're 8-5, 9-3. If Lane is right, is that acceptable for LSU? Because if LSU spent $200 million this offseason on coaches.
Yeah, that's unbelievable. It's hard to say because with Kurt Signetti winning the national championship last season, it did not help the Lane Kiffin cause and did not help the expectations. And I think this is obviously pre-damage control on his part of saying, pump the brakes. I saw people on Twitter making commentary. It was not about LSU. I can't remember who it was about, but basically saying, like, if this guy doesn't win 10 games this year, fire him. And it was a new coach. I think people talking about Alex Golesh in Auburn. And people in the comments, there was a couple people in the comments, thankfully, with a brain saying, pump the brakes. We're not, like, Kurt Signetti is not he's not the example. He is not what we should be, right? He was an outlier. He's a data point that we shouldn't factor in. And I think Lane Kiffin is kind of tampering that because, yes, $200 million is a lot of money to acquire the coaches. And they went crazy in the portal. Sam Levitt, Jordan Seaton, Eugene Wilson, Jace Brown, plus dozens more that I'm not thinking of the top of my head. They have like the pieces, but he's right. It does take time together. And we'll go through the schedule and we'll look at the feasibility. I think 8 wins. I think the FanDuel line is 8.5. So I would say 8 and below. Yeah, that if you go 7-6 or worse, that's a bad look. So I do think this is a better roster, and I do think this is a better coaching staff. But I think 9-3 would definitely be a solid first year with all of the moving parts that they've had. Yeah. And then 10 plus wins, I would be ecstatic about. It just LSU fans, from what we can tell, they're not very patient. And that's fair. They've won a championship in recent memory. Like, they expect that level of output. I do think he's going to have to win 9 games to be not considered that season was a failure. I think 9 games would probably be my.
Yeah, I'll probably buy that. Maybe it's like recency bias for me. I don't love a coach who just went roughshod on the portal, whose athletic department just talked crap about giving Brian Kelly $54 million to get fired as a buyout and then paid Lane Kiffin, $90 million? They just went out and hired Will Wade. By the way, the basketball hiring, nuts on its own. They haven't fired their current basketball coach yet. So they announced at the time of Will Wade's hiring, they technically hadn't fired the basketball coach yet. So
that's unbelievable.
I'm just saying, like, a program like LSU, an athletic department like LSU, they're putting all their chips in the middle. They're putting their cards on the table. They're not saying, hey, you got time to rebuild. You got time to make this thing right. It's like, no, we as the athletic department have time to make it right. You are our step to making that right. You got to go do it. And I've gone back and forth on this. I wanted to give the take of, if Lane Kiffin truly thinks this is a long-term rebuild or a short-term rebuild, at least, if he doesn't think this is a quick year one, like, you're going to be awesome, then there's going to be a lot of unhappy people in Baton Rouge. So I think that's one. But I also think this, on the other hand, like you look at their schedule, they open against Clemson. They have Ole Miss week 2, which should be electric on the road. Lane Kiffin going back there. Texas A&M week 3. Dude, that's a tough first 3 games for a new coaching staff, new offense, new quarterback, new left tackle, new wide receiver, new everything, just trying to mesh. It's not like you get like Rice to start out. It's not like you get Sam Houston State. Say what you want about Clemson. You're starting against Clemson. And then like week 2, you don't have a soft spot there. It's an extremely emotional game for everyone involved going to Ole Miss. You go to Texas A&M, and then you get a break with McNeese, and then you go to Kentucky. And mind you, we have no idea what to expect about Kentucky. Kentucky has the lowest win total, tied with Mississippi State in the SEC this year at 4.5. But I think a lot of that's by the schedule. Like Will Stein walked into a really tough thing, and we'll get into the win totals in just a little bit. All I'm trying to say is like first guttural reaction to Lane Kiffin saying that was, dude, stop it. Like you just got the number 1 left tackle, you got the number 1 quarterback, you got the number 1 receiver. Like you did everything to set yourself up to be really good this year. And if you are that $90 million coach, you should already be on your way there. But then on the other hand, I guess, and I know I've gone on too long, you look at their schedule, I understand why he's trying to pump the brakes a little bit.
Yeah, you finished the year Alabama, Texas, at Tennessee, at Arkansas. So I think he saw the schedule and was like, oh man, I need to do some damage control at prepping for it. But if an LSU fan or an LSU booster were to tell me they did not like this, I would be totally okay with them saying that for the reasons you said. For the amount of money and attention and hype that went into this full off season, it would be, if I was a fan, I don't think I would like to hear how we spent $200 million in one off season. And then, oh, by the way, if we go 7-5, don't be alarmed. I'd be like, whoa, hold on a minute.
Yeah.
That's a lot of money and a lot of time. And it's a lot of talent. This is a very talented team. And when you build through the portal, the one thing, and we've talked about this a lot, building through the portal to me is not a give us a year and we're going to be fine. If you have a really good freshman class, I'm fine with you saying, give us a year or two and we'll be good. But when you bring in a bunch of guys who are going to play for 1 year and go to the draft, it doesn't necessarily make me feel comfortable that this is like a sustained rebuild of like, oh, we're going in the right direction. Well, you're going to lose Jordan Seaton after this year. You're going to lose Sam Levitt. You're probably going to lose Eugene Wilson and Jace Brown. Caden Durham, who was your star running back the last 2 years, is now supposed to be the backup. I don't know how long he's going to stick around. LSU is playing that dangerous game. I think it's fair for Lane to say this from his point of view, looking at the schedule. I don't know if it's a tough spot, right? It's get the idea of lowering expectations, because if he doesn't say anything and then they go 10-2 with a late season loss at Tennessee, fans are going to lose their mind if that's what costs them a SEC championship or a playoff. But at the same time, you did spend $200 million, and it's Lane Kiffin. He's not going to be quiet. You know, he's not going to be quiet when they win. He's not going to be quiet on social media. If they win, he's going to be making snarky comments about the team they beat. If they beat Ole Miss, he's going to make a snarky comment. He's going to draw attention all season. He's going to post a picture of him at some sorority on an off week.
Yeah.
Like, he's going to beg for that attention. So I do understand as an LSU fan to hear this and be a little annoyed for a coach that's making as much money as him and is making as much attention as him.
Do you think Lane Kiffin has, this might be crazy to say for a Power 4 head coach, a bit of an inferiority complex? Or like, just because
I'm no therapist, but
yeah,
could be.
Just like at Ole Miss, especially before they were like, he had really built them up. He started doing really good things in the SEC, but he just couldn't beat the Alabamas, the Georgias of the world, who were more physical and bigger than his team. And then NIL came in and allowed him to go, rightfully so, go buy or bring in transfers who could bridge that gap on the defensive and offensive lines and like make it closer between him, Alabama, and Georgia. I almost wonder if he's like looking at the schedule from the standpoint of Ole Miss, from a standpoint, not that maybe it is still his scheme, it is his whatever, but like, dude, you got the number 1 quarterback in the portal. You got the number 1 left tackle. Like, Jordan Seaton has injury issues. but like you're not like fighting your way back to the top. With due respect to Trinidad Chambliss, a kid from Division II, you just went out and got the best quarterback you could. You just went out and got the best transfer class you could. Obviously, this isn't your first cycle recruiting high schoolers, so you don't have your guys in to lay your foundation. I understand that. I just think like pumping the brakes after all that investment's gone in is a little childish. I do also wonder, I have to also point out the 200 million isn't just on the football team. It's on the athletic department of LSU because of everything they've done, basketball, football, all that. It is nuts though.
Will Wade, the buyout there. It's a program that feels like it has infinite money. And I think that's part of the reason why the expectations are going to be high for them. And you asked a good question here. Sorry, I'm looking at the FanDuel. I'm looking at their schedule and the FanDuel odds. I'm doing the math. So what are the realistic expectations for Lane Kiffin in year one? FanDuel says 8.5. I just want to break this down with you real quick and see if we can get a number. Give me win or loss. I'm going to go through this. Home game against Clemson.
I want to say win.
Okay. Home game against Louisiana Tech.
That's not on the ESPN schedule, is that? It must be because it's in between.
It's in between the Clemson and Ole Miss game.
Weird. ESPN just screwed me.
We'll give them.
I'll give them the win there.
Okay, we got 2 at Ole Miss.
At Ole Miss,
going to the Grove.
Trinidad, and Ole Miss looking for revenge. Lane trying to be the villain. Dude, I still would. I'll give Ole Miss the win.
I like Q and Lacey and Trinidad to bring that one home for them. Home game against Texas A&M.
I think that's a loss.
I think so too. They're 2-2 at this point. McNeese win. We'll give them that one. 3-2 at Kentucky. I assume you're okay with a win there.
A win.
4-2. Mississippi State at home. I love my Bulldogs this year, but are they getting it done?
I think that's a win. So probably 5.
Yeah, 5 wins.
You didn't spend that money.
Auburn.
All due respect, Kamari Taylor, Mississippi State, you love them, but like you didn't spend that money in the portal to lose to Mississippi State this year.
Absolutely. And then at Auburn, are we going win, or is Golish going to make some magic happen?
See, that's the wild card. How does Auburn look year one with Golish? If Auburn still looks like Auburn of the last 3-4 years, then that's an easy win.
Yeah, we'll call that a win. That's 6. So they're at 6 wins heading into their bye, giving them 4 games left, which is Bama, Texas, at Tennessee. We'll count the win at Arkansas. So we'll pencil in 7 wins. Can they win 2 of Alabama, Texas, at Tennessee?
I think Texas is a loss. My initial reaction was that's 1-3, that stretch. But then, we don't know what Alabama's going to look like this year with their quarterback. We don't know if, as much as you and I think Kalen DeBoer is a really good coach, we don't know if Alabama's truly falling off a little bit, or if Kalen's finally getting his team in and they're gonna take off like a rocket ship, man. So Alabama's a real wild card there. Tennessee, they're gonna be hard to beat, especially in Neyland. It's for LSU's year one with Lane Kiffin, man. That would be like a safe 2-2 to me, but I strong possibility is 1-3 as well.
I agree. Yeah. So their schedule comes down to Ole Miss, Texas A&M, Alabama, Texas, Tennessee. If they go 3-2 in those games, they hit their over. I think that's a good season year one for Lane Kiffin. If you go 2-3 in those, you miss your over, and you start to maybe hey, we lost most of these games in the SEC against the good teams. We spent all this money. You start to question it. And I think if they go 1-4 or worse, or 0-5, then you're in hot water. So you got to ask yourself, can Lane Kiffin and LSU win 3 ranked games this year in the 5 chances they'll get? That's what you're looking at for the over. That feels like Vegas did a good job making that line, because I don't know what we're going to get out of, like you said, Bama and Tennessee. That's a really hard line to predict. Probably not one I'm touching, but a good one nonetheless. And yeah, I think that Vegas, this is a good case of, it's straightforward. I think 9-3 sounds good enough to move on to next year and have hopes. 8-4 sounds bad enough to be a little annoyed at that season. So 8.5 not only a good line in terms of the schedule, but a good emotional line too of where I think fans will be at depending on where they teeter.
I'll say this just to come off my I don't know. I feel like I went a little far with expectations for them, maybe, but 8.5 is if you look at the rest of the SEC win totals, and we're going to get to that in like a minute, but if you look at the rest of the SEC win totals, 8.5 is a good number. 8.5 is a strong number in the SEC. Like, no team in the SEC has a higher than a 9.5 win total. So 8.5 isn't Vegas saying you're bad. It's saying you got a tough schedule. Like, you might be really good, but you're playing some tough teams. Yeah, LSU could beat Mississippi State. I mean, Texas A&M, and all of a sudden they're going to Alabama as a top 5 team in the country, top 6 team in the country, and then that last stretch of games with Bama, Texas, Tennessee is a big difference maker of like how their season ends and how we remember at the end of the year.
Yeah, well, I think their home stretch is setting up to be a very fun one as neutral fans, as fans that don't sweat it, because you're right. LSU could go into that post-bye game, number 10 in the country, playing Bama, who's going to probably be top 15, and then play a Texas, who's probably going to be top 5. And then even the Auburn game that kind of sneaks in there right before then, there's a chance Golish and Auburn are ranked or dang near. Byron Brown's always a fun guy to watch. We talked a lot about him last year. Even like Kentucky and Mississippi State, not that I think they're going to win, but they pose interesting enough matchups. Kentucky, what's the new team going to look like with Will Stein and Kenny Minchie? What do things look like in Mississippi State with Levy and Taylor, and kind of Levy's 4th year, finally getting some of his guys in? What do all these teams look like? It'll be the SEC, and I'll use this as our segue to our next segment. The SEC this year is going to be so deep in the middle. There are like 8 to 10 teams who could conceivably go 9-3 or 3-9. And I don't know if you would be too surprised in either direction. There's very few, like Texas is maybe the one team, and Georgia, maybe the 2 teams that I feel they're going to be good for sure. And I would say Kentucky and Arkansas are the 2 teams that I feel like are going to be bad for sure.
And then which is surprising.
And then outside of those 4, everyone else in the SEC, I think could have a 3 or 4 game variance from their win totals, which let's jump into that one now. Should we start at the top with win totals?
Yeah. So, I mean, Georgia and Texas are leading the way in the SEC. Their win total per FanDuel is 9.5. Alabama, LSU, A&M each have an 8.5 win total. So, by the way, back to the LSU conversation, Alabama, LSU, and A&M, according to Vegas, have similar win totals. They're not all going to win the same amount of games, and I think they play each other. So, or at least LSU plays both of those teams. So, depending on how the other 2 come into it, LSU's win total could be much more realistic if A&M just takes a cliff dive after last year, or Alabama is not the same anymore. But it could go the other way. Florida, Tennessee, Oklahoma, Ole Miss are at 7.5. By the way, ridiculous numbers for some of these teams. I think there's plenty to discuss here. Auburn, South Carolina, Mizzou at 6.5. Vanderbilt is our lone 5.5 win total represented from the SEC. And then Arkansas, Mississippi State, and Kentucky are at 4.5 win total. So we can start just like brass tacks, Jace. Initial reactions. Who's too high? Who's too low? I'm always very interested in these win totals based off of like what it would mean if that team did that. So we'll get into that. But I just want to, like, who's too high, who's too low, who's perfect, do you think?
Texas at 9.5 is one that jumps off immediately as, I think I like the over. But their schedule is, SEC is a gauntlet, right? They have Ohio State to start the year again, or second week of the year. They do play at Tennessee. They do play Oklahoma in Dallas. Then they get Ole Miss. They still play Florida. They play at Mizzou. They play at LSU, and they play at Texas A&M. Texas, I think, is a phenomenal football team and very capable of winning more than 10 games. But man, at LSU, at Texas A&M, if they can go 1-1 there, then they only can lose one more game. But like I said, you get Ole Miss, at Tennessee, Oklahoma, and Ohio State. You have to win 3 of those games. That's asking for a lot out of them. They're a tough line. I think the Alabama, LSU, A&M, all at 8.5, because they all have relatively difficult schedules, or in Alabama's case, a couple question marks. The 8.5s there feel difficult. And then I think immediate gut reaction, I like the idea of a Florida and Tennessee unders. I think Tennessee, I don't think I've liked the quarterback situation they're going into the year with. And it's nothing like, I don't think Faison doesn't have an opportunity to be great, but I also think a freshman quarterback in the SEC that has to play Texas, Auburn, at Arkansas, Alabama, Texas A&M, LSU, it's a tough schedule. Those are tough games. They're winnable. Absolutely. And then Florida they're just in a tough spot. I think with Summerall coming in, they hit on a few transfer pieces, but they also lost a lot in the transfer portal as well. And then that's similarly, they're going on year 3 of just a very difficult schedule. And I think sometimes first year head coach, I don't know how much I trust the quarterback situation there. That can just create a difficult environment to navigate 8 wins if you're Florida team. And then at the back end, you guys probably saw this one coming. I love the Mississippi State over 4.5 wins. I see 4.5 wins on their schedule. I'm going to talk through it here. All right. I just need to find 5 wins for Mississippi State. I think they beat Louisiana Monroe. I think that's a very winnable game. I think Tennessee Tech is very winnable. So that's 2. I just need 3 more. Out of Minnesota, South Carolina, Missouri, Vanderbilt, and Auburn, those 5 games, if they can just win 3 of those 5, they would cash that over. I would like to think that they could beat 3 of Minnesota, South Carolina, Missouri at home, Vandy at home, Auburn at home, and then boom, that hits. And I like it too because in the middle of the season, all these games are back-to-back of Bama at LSU, Oklahoma at Texas. Though they're probably going to lose all of those, but I like that because you go to the end of the year with Vanderbilt, Auburn, Tennessee Tech, and that sets you up nicely to be kind of overlooked. You're coming off a bad stretch. It's also a good opportunity for Jeff Levy to rally his troops, say, hey, we got 3 winnable games. Let's get this thing rolling. It's going to be a sweat of a season because they're definitely not going to be at 5 wins going into that final stretch. So this is not a bet that I'm thinking you're cashing week 5. This is a bet that I'm banking on a nice turnaround at the end of the season. Camario Taylor starts to pick it up. Levy gets his boys fired up, and they can finish the season on a little bit of a win streak there. But Mississippi State is one I'll tell you right now, I'll definitely be betting on their hope. I like the way the schedule lines up.
I like that you have your team that you're following that probably has a low win total, and I have my UCLA as well.
Yeah, we got our boys.
So my first reaction when I saw the SEC win totals was Florida's surprising at 7.5. But I still, I think if we remember last year, I think it was 7.5 or 8.5 or somewhere around there too. It's more to say like the roster hasn't been terrible. Obviously, there's some things to fix. It was the coaching that was bad. So Vegas is once again predicting higher. I would say I lean to the under with Florida for this season. I don't know if Summerall is going to work magic in year 1. I think John Summerall's your old school type of coach where like he wants to lay his foundation. And maybe you don't necessarily have time to do that as a college football coach anymore in 2026. Like the Cursignetis of the world have ruined it. I feel like he wants to set his culture, lay his foundation, bring his guys in, not be a mercenary to the portal and only go after those guys. And I don't know how good they're going to be right away. I do know that I'm probably expecting a tougher Florida team, one that will hang in there in tougher games, one that like won't wilt when something goes wrong. And I wouldn't be shocked if they hit the over, but I think right now I lean to the under on Florida. Auburn, I don't know what to make of Auburn.
Yeah.
It's Brian Brown's in, Alex Kolsch is in. I hope that they're going to be good, but at the same time, I don't know. It's been years since we've seen anybody do good things at Auburn. So I have like, what's it called? Historical data to tell me not to take the over on Auburn. Vanderbilt's interesting. Jared Curtis, 5.5 wins coming in. True freshman quarterback, 5-star kid. Vanderbilt's win total is at 5.5. That's really interesting to me. Mainly because is that how much like was Diego Pavia worth 3 games to them? Like if Diego Pavia was the quarterback of this team, would they be at 8.5? Do you think?
I think they would still be lower. I know like they lost Stowers and they had a really good secondary that they lost almost the whole thing on. And the thing with Clark Lay and Vandy, they're not like one of those schools that's gonna reload every year. It's not like he was, putting together top recruiting classes year in, year out. And I think that class of Pavia, Stowers, and the defensive backs, that was one class that all kind of just raised together, and they were phenomenal the last couple of years and really building up to what was a great season last year. I think they lost a lot of that, and I don't think they had the backfield recruits to really just immediately replace that production. And I'm not sure they did enough in the portal to also fill that production. So now you're banking on kind of think of what Vandy was 4 years ago. I think we're kind of right back there. Talk about a window program. I think that window is there. I think we're back at the barrel of like, okay, can they build back up? I'm pulling up their schedule right now to have a better idea, but I do think they're more of a window than a reload.
Well,
so I
yeah,
think it's
probably.
fair. Yeah, I think it's fair that they might have a lower win total. And again, no shade. I know that I'm not high on freshman quarterbacks, and I talk about that a lot. It's not a shade that I think they're bad football players. Like, I don't think Bryce Underwood's a bad football player. I don't think Faison or Curtis are bad football players. I just think in today's world of college football, where most guys that are playing big at high level programs are either like elite athletes and they're young, or they're 25 years old and they have grown man strength and they've been playing college football for 7 years. It's just really hard to be an 18-year-old quarterback in today's world versus 10 years ago, everyone was between 18 and 21, and you could maybe give it a shot. I just think it's difficult.
We've had this conversation so much on this show. Like, how often does a true freshman quarterback go out and excel? And Trevor Lawrence was the last guy that really did that. And that's because he was the Gatorade High School National Player of the Year. He was the number one player in he's been the best. He's been the best of the best at every position leading up to his NFL days. And now, obviously, he's not the best quarterback in the league in the NFL right now, but he's still a $200+ million guy in the NFL. Like, Trevor Lawrence is a special talent. There's not a lot others like that. Obviously, we think Bryce Underwood's a special talent. We've heard since Tromore was fired and Kyle Whittingham came in, Michigan didn't have a quarterbacks coach for him last year. And you have a true freshman quarterback who's supposed to be the next big thing. You put $10 million into him. You didn't bring him a quarterbacks coach that would cost you $1 million. That's besides the point. Regardless, Michigan is actually like a good example of what people normally do in today's day and age with true freshman quarterback. All right, if you're athletic, JJ McCarthy, you're not going to throw the ball unless it's like a play action pass that we just want to do a trick play. You're coming in on specific packages where we need the quarterback to run the ball and we want it to be 11 on 11. Like JJ McCarthy, his freshman year, he was just taking the ball and running. The freshman quarterbacks that aren't planned to be the stars right away are normally the ones, maybe there's a better term for this, that they just want to get hit. Like our starting quarterback, we keep him healthy. This guy, you'll be our quarterback in a couple of years if you pan out. But for now, we need you to get like four tough yards on the ground. You'll get hit. It's fine.
Yeah, I think it's a double whammy of we're not getting our starting QB hurt or hit, and I'm getting this 18-year-old kid acclimated, because the last time he was hit was against a 16-year-old 5'8", 160 safety. Well, let me tell you, there's this guy named Caleb Downs who's 6'2", 220, and he is going to rock your shit. So I do think it's the double whammy there. Go back to Vandy. Looking at their schedule, the 5.5 is more enticing than I had originally realized. Austin Peay, Delaware, and NC State at home. Those are 3 very winnable games. At Auburn, again, we've talked about Auburn still such a toss-up that game's a toss-up. You get Arkansas at home, at Kentucky, that's a toss-up. At Mississippi State, toss-up. At Florida, toss-up. And then you get Tennessee to end the year at home. That's a very winnable, favorable schedule. You're probably going to lose to Georgia, Ole Miss, and Alabama. But other than those 3 games, if you can go 6-3 in the other 9, which, I mean, you should definitely beat Delaware and Austin Peay, that puts them in a pretty good spot. You just got to go 4-3 against the middle of the pack SEC. If you think Vandy can go 4-3 against the middle bottom part of the SEC, the over is very much an option for you. Of 5.5. So I retract my older statement of I don't like it. Looking back at the schedule, there is definitely some hope for them to hit that number.
Yeah, there's one more team in the SEC that I want to talk about before we move on to Notre Dame. So Oklahoma, their projected win total is 7.5. Their projected win total is the same of Ole Miss, another playoff team, but also of Tennessee that missed the playoffs this year, and Florida that fired their coach because they've been bad for the last several years. Oklahoma's schedule for next year starts at home against UTEP, on the road, Michigan, New Mexico at home, Georgia on the road, Texas neutral site, Kentucky at home, Mississippi State on the road, South Carolina at home, Florida on the road, Ole Miss and A&M at home, and then Mizzou on the road. I think it's shocking to me, and I know you have your, what's it called? Your
John
doubts a
Mateer
little bit about
hesitation.
John Mateer. Yeah, your hesitations about John Mateer, but I also think we've seen John Mateer when he's been right. And we saw Oklahoma, and yes, that maybe that was the rest of college football like catching up to him or whatever, but we also saw him get hurt. I'm not saying he's like they're going to be world beaters next year, but we know what a Brent Venables defense is, and no matter how much stuff they have to replace, we know what they're going to be again, and then or at least similar to that, and then they're bringing back their quarterback, man. Like, how many teams around the country are bringing back a starting quarterback and an elite defense or close to elite defense, depending on who they bring back, and they're only looking at 7.5 wins? I think that's laughable to me. Look, the schedule is hard. Like, Florida's going to be harder to beat this year. Just the John Summerall factor is going to make it harder. Ole Miss, I know everyone's really high on Ole Miss because of Trinidad and what they're bringing back, but they hired the coach that led the worst unit of that team. Ole Miss was known for their offense last year, not for their defense, and they hired the defensive coordinator as the coach. Obviously, they couldn't hire the offensive coordinator. That was Lane Kiffin, but still, A&M, I expect Marcel Reed and A&M to be really good again. Mizzou, we don't know yet. Mississippi State, if you're right, that's going to be a tough beat, but I still probably expect Oklahoma to beat their old offensive coordinator, Jeff Lebby. Kentucky, you got them at home. You should beat them. Texas, I think that's probably a loss. Georgia, probably a loss. Michigan, who knows? I mean, you're playing the big house, but still. My point is, I recognize their schedule's hard, but just the matter of the fact that like they're bringing back a quarterback who was projected to be the Heisman early last season. Yes, it was early last season, but still. And you're bringing back a defense, a lot of the defense that was pretty solid last year. 7.5 feels light for me.
I think you're right. The defense, they bring in one transfer at middle linebacker. Outside of him, and he comes from Michigan, so it's fair to say he's a good football player and he knows defense. And outside of that, every single player has been with the program since they started their college careers. It's been guys that came for Brent Venables and been bought in. So you're going to have 10 starters that have been at the school for 2 to 4 years, all bought into Venables. They all know the scheme, with one guy coming in, again, transfer from kind of a school that consistently produces top-end defensive talent. So I feel good there. And then offensively, if let's say John Mateer really did have a hand issue last year, and that was genuinely why we saw the year we saw out of him. If that's fixed, who's to say he doesn't return to old form? You have a really good wide receiver room. They return Satanega back.
Isaiah Satania.
Right. Yeah, Satania. They return him back, and then they get Trell Harris out of Kent State. He was a highly productive receiver at a smaller school last year. We'll see what he can do. And then Parker Livingstone from Texas is there. You were the same question we had last year, and I think this is going to dictate the 7.5. What does the ground game look like? They bring in a new right tackle, so we'll see if that helps. They bring in a blocking tight end. We'll see if that helps. And then the running back room, it's guys that have been there, but I don't know if that I don't know if that's a compliment because they haven't run the ball a whole lot. So we'll see what goes on with the run game. I think the 7.5 is, because you make a good point. There are 9 winnable games on their schedule, which usually with Vegas odds, it's right on the money. You're like, oh, they could win 7 or 8. Oh, shoot, they're at 7.5. It feels like they could win 8 or 9, and they're at 7.5. But I do think at the end of the day, winning a game at Mississippi State, you're probably going to have a late lead. Are you able to run the clock out? At Missouri, you could have a late lead. Are you going to be able to run the clock out? At Florida, you might have a late lead. Are you going to be able to run the clock out? And then to beat teams like Ole Miss, Texas A&M, they're going to be stronger defensively than they have been the last couple of years. Are you going to be one-dimensional? Because if you try to play Mike Elko as a one-dimensional offense, it's not going to go well. But if you have the ability to run the football, unlike you did last year, that opens up a whole new realm for John Mateer and for this good wide receiver room. That also allows you to control the clock, which means your defense is a little bit more rested. And when you have an elite defense, the one thing that can ruin an elite defense is tiredness, lack of stamina.
Yeah.
And that happens because you're throwing the football 50 times, and that leads to quick 3-and-outs. That leads to no clock bleeding. That leads to quick turnovers, or at the other end of it, quick touchdowns and quick scores that don't really help your defense anyways. So that's going to be the big question mark for Oklahoma. And I don't have an answer. I have no idea what their run game is going to look like in 2026.
But that's because last year John Mateer was the leading rusher on a lot of their games, and that's one of the reasons. Like, people keep talking about the hand, and the hand was certainly a thing. I think Mateer was just beat up. The guy kept getting hit because he was the entire offense.
For sure.
I think Oklahoma can get to 7.5, can get to 8 wins with a bad running game. I think Oklahoma's path to the playoff, path to the SEC championship, a conference championship game, path to doing something really special this year is if they have a run game, because that's how they can go out and compete with Georgia. That's how they can go out and compete with Texas. That's how they can go out and beat like the really, really elite of the elite teams. You're right. Like, you can't have a one-dimensional offense, but I think you can against Mizzou. I think you can against Florida, South Carolina, Mississippi State, Kentucky, New Mexico, and UTEP. Mainly because I think Brent Venables' defense just chokes you. Like, it takes away all hope. And then John Mateer and the offense just need a couple of the plays to go right. All of a sudden, they've got momentum. They've scored 2 touchdowns. You could barely get to their side of the ball. I think that defense and Mateer and those receivers are enough to get to 8. Getting to the playoff, that's going to require the run game.
That's true. Yeah, that's the difference between losing to Texas by 28 and beating Texas by 3.
Or losing to Texas by 3.
Yeah,
like,
or losing by.
I'm not saying you're going to go
good.
beat Texas. Yeah.
Yeah, but yeah, competing and looking good in the sense that, like, oh, I just watched a high caliber team play versus getting your breaks beat and then you're screwed. Also, I'm just looking at John Mateer over the last 2 seasons has taken well over 300 hits as a quarterback. That's not even counting sacks. That's just pure carries that ended in him being tackled. So add in sacks, you're probably looking at upper 300s pushing 4. That's just not good. That's just for a guy that had a banged up hand. Yeah, I see a world where you're like minor league concussed, or you take a shot on the elbow and your arm's just kind of sore. It's a lot of hits to take that's like a Derrick Henry NFL season worth of hits, but for John Mateer, which is just not good.
All right, let's spend 10 minutes on this, and we can make this a longer topic at a date down the road. We're going to stick in the win totals, and we're going to talk about Notre Dame, though, because Notre Dame and Texas Tech have the highest win totals in the country this year. Obviously, I told you that the 2 teams, Georgia and Texas in the SEC, have a 9.5 win total. That's the highest in the SEC. Oregon and Indiana in the Big Ten, highest in the Big Ten. That's 10.5. Difficulty aside, I think it's saying these are the best teams in the country. Notre Dame and Texas Tech have an 11.5 win total. Texas Tech, obviously, in an easier conference in the Big 12. Notre Dame gets to choose their schedule. So at 11.5, they're number 1 in the country in returning production. 72% of the production is returning. 67% of the offense is returning. 77% of the defense is returning. Jeremiah Love is gone. Price is gone. They've lost big pieces. Don't get me wrong. But they bring back their quarterback. They bring back clearly a lot of their team, and Vegas is expecting them. Like, boys, if you lose, you lost to Miami. You can't lose to anybody else.
Yeah.
Like, looking at the schedule itself, I'm shocked how little we've heard about Notre Dame this year. And part of that is, so we're like the genesis of this segment. Josh Pate went on his show, and he was going over his concerns for certain teams for the year. And he said, my concern for Notre Dame, he was trying to be tongue-in-cheek, a little funny, is that they're going to get complacent because they're ranked number 1 on Pate's rankings for entering the year, because he was like, they're returning all this production. Their schedule is so good. I mean, so easy. My point is, like, if Notre Dame goes out and wins 9 games, how much of a failure is that? Not that that's going to happen, but how much of a failure is that? Yeah.
Massive. This is the easiest schedule for like any top team arguably that I've ever seen in my life. Anything short of 10 wins, I think, is horrible. But not 9 wins or below at this schedule would most likely mean they lost 2+ games as like 15+ point favorites, which is horrible to do in a season. Even 10 wins, I would argue, would be horrible because obviously Miami's good and you can lose that game and be fine. You wouldn't hit your over-under, which would be annoying. But 10 wins would mean you had to lose to someone that you were probably projected to beat by 2, 3, 4 scores. Anything below that would be abysmal. 10-2, I think, is a disappointment. 11 wins, in assuming it's Miami, is fine. Then obviously 12-0 is good. This team should have really high expectations, and I almost think it's better for them where they're at now. You return CJ Carr. Obviously, you lose the stud running backs, but you return a really good O-line. And then you talked about all the production on defense that they return. And then not to mention, Notre Dame, the last 2 or 3 years under Marcus Freeman, have recruited as one of the best teams in the country. So there's like chock full of 4 and 5 stars who we've never seen, like who will get chances this year, who might come in and fill in playing time, are going to compete for starting jobs. That's the iron sharpens iron thing. This is a Notre Dame team that has depth. They have top-end talent. They can throw the ball. They can run the ball. They have good defense. And I'm a big Marcus Freeman guy. I think he's a phenomenal coach. I think he's consistently got good game plans. I think he's always a coach that's got his team playing hard. I see no reason why this team isn't I think 11-1 is the floor, absolute floor for them, which guarantees them a playoff spot given their negotiations for where they finish ranked and all of that.
But they're ranked.
There's
14th
no
or
reason
something.
why. Yeah, that would be hilarious. Lose to Miami and drop them. Now I will say this: if Notre Dame loses 2 games, there's no way in hell they should be in the playoff, just given the schedule. Because if losing that second game would be losing to a bottom tier SEC or ACC or a bottom tier non-power conference team, which would be bad. Let's say I do think this is the year Notre Dame plays in the national title and or semifinal. I just think they're a really good team,
Again?
and they're gonna have. I do think again, and that's true. Like 2 years ago, I think that with Notre Dame, they get the benefit that the SEC will not have, and a lot of teams won't, where because you don't play a conference championship game, you don't play a grueling schedule, you hypothetically can get your team healthy and get your backups experience and kind of keep things in ship. Whereas a lot of these other teams that are going to be ending the year by playing Texas, by playing Ohio State, by playing Oregon, Indiana, all these big games, and then they have to go play a conference championship. That's when you get those like brutal injuries late in the year, and the backup has no experience because you just didn't have the time to get them in. So Notre Dame should be sitting very pretty come playoff time. They should be healthy. They should be one or 2 or 3, and I imagine a lock for the playoff.
And they're not playing Northern Illinois, so I think they're probably good there. But look, I don't want to come off as the guy that like complains about a soft schedule, because realistically, fans who say they want to go through the best of the best to win a championship, you are foolish, because that means you're going to go play the best of the best and you might lose. Like if it were up to me, I want my team to have the easiest path to the championship as I can. That is the least amount of room for heartbreak, least amount of room for stress and tension in my heart. It will add years to my life if I don't have to go through another October 28th game against like a mid-tier team to watch, to hope that my team like squeezes it out. With that said, I want, like, we just talked about the SEC. We just talked about how much middle room there is in the SEC. We just talked about how, like, Florida, Tennessee, Oklahoma, they're all projected to have 7.5 wins. If they had Notre Dame's schedule, what would they be projected to have? Like
12?
10? 12?
Just kidding.
It's not saying the SEC is better. Neither of us are the like SEC's greatly superior people. Neither of us say that.
9.5 would be the over under total.
My thing is, like, you bring back your quarterback, you bring back a lot of pieces. Yes, Jeremiah Love is gone, and but like you bring back so much, and clearly number 1 in the country in terms of total production that you're bringing back. You have this schedule where you get Wisconsin, Rice, Michigan State, North Carolina, Stanford, BYU, Navy, Miami, Boston College, SMU, and Syracuse. You said anything lower than 10 wins is a failure. I think anything lower than 11 is a failure for Notre Dame.
Yeah, sorry.
Because
10 wins and below is a failure. Like 11-1 is should be the floor. Anything below that is a failure.
I think that's absolutely right. You could tell me right now, and I understand the argument, like, hey, Syracuse could be a little bit better. That could give them problems. No, that game should be over in the third quarter. SMU could really give them troubles. Yes, I love Rhett Lashley. I love what he does with that team. But Notre Dame should be able to outlast SMU. Miami, we'll see what they are. They should be really good next year, and they could be the team to beat them. Notre Dame is also coming into this game against Miami this year as like that was what kept us out of the playoffs last year. So they're going to come in with a huge chip on their shoulder. I don't really expect them to lose to them. So that leaves like BYU, who's also bringing back their own quarterback, who is coming back loaded, just re-signed their coach to keep him around in town in Provo for another several years. If you told me they lost to BYU in Miami, I would be like, okay, so there's a ceiling on this team that Brian Kelly once thought, but there's still a ceiling on Notre Dame or on Marcus Freeman where you could have the easiest schedule. You could have the number one production coming back, but that's still going to lead to some losses that you didn't need to take. So if you take 2 losses, I'm going to be like heavily disappointed, which is an incredibly unfair thing to say about a team or a program of 18 to 22-year-old kids. But like looking at the schedule, man, if you take 2 losses, I'm going to be disappointed. If you take 1, I'll be like, okay, I get it. But if you take 2, I'm going to be very disappointed.
I completely agree. And I'll give Notre Dame a little bit of credit. USC backing out of that rivalry. Did like end up, that was one of those where they had to backfill with just like a bad team. So that did
not
take
bashing
away
the schedule.
No, not at all. I'm just giving them the credit there. I'll talk about one nightmare scenario for Notre Dame, or just a hypothetical that could happen. November 7th is when they play Miami. That could arguably be the last like competitive football game, physical competitive game that they play for the season. SMU maybe, but I'm not sure if I'd call it that yet. Let's say it's that Miami game November 7th. And Notre Dame wins that game, they go 12-0. They're going to get a bye, most likely in the playoff. That means they wouldn't then play another competitive physical football game for like a month and a half. And that means they would also have to play what would most likely be an SEC or Big Ten team, meaning they have played a lot of physical games and much more recent than Notre Dame. And they got a tune-up game, not having the bye. And I can tell you right now, I would not want to play 11-1 Kurt Signetti, who's coming off beating the brakes off of a JMU. And then now your first game in a month and a half that means something that's physical is a game Indiana just played and has played for the last 4 weeks. That's the nightmare scenario for Notre Dame. It's almost like I don't want that bye, because I think to Notre Dame's benefit, when you don't play a tough schedule, you do want a tune-up game against a good but lesser opponent, so that playing in the first round for them means they're getting like not the number 1 or number 2 in the SEC or Big Ten, or it means you're getting the really good group of 5 team, which would be a great tune-up opportunity to go into that second round. So a bye week for them really could, I don't want to make excuses for them, but that bye week could be pretty detrimental to Notre Dame, as we've seen it happen in the last 2 years.
Well, we'll see. They obviously are losing Jeremiah Love, and he's going to be a projected top 10 pick in the NFL draft this year. A lot of stuff to follow with that. Obviously, like I said at the beginning of this show, make sure you tune in next week as well. We're going to have our full first round of the NFL draft mocked out to you. We'll let you know where we think, or I don't even know if it's going to be where we think Jeremiah Love falls, but it's going to be where one of us picks Jeremiah Love. We're going to take the roles as GMs of 32 NFL teams and try to make it happen. Make sure you're following us on Twitter at F4Discussion, TikTok at Flag 4 Discussion. We're on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts at Flag 4 Discussion spelled out. We're also on YouTube at Flag 4 Discussion spelled out. Make sure you subscribe there. Thank you so much for listening. Jace, you got any more comments on the squirrels vaping?
Squirrels are vaping. 12 tons of Kit Kat bars have been stolen in Europe. Barbode, cough those up, or share some with me at least.
I had a Kit Kat yesterday. I don't know where I put them. By the way, I got Cheetos. I don't know what kind of Cheetos these are.
Yeah, I don't know what language that is.
this all like I don't know what kind of Cheetos these are, but we'll find out and we'll let you know. Thank you so much for listening. From myself, Farvod Merkazi, my lovely partner Jace Hatfield. This has been Flag for Discussion.